Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another night of Good Night Stories with Monica, and I'm reading to my friend George. We are continuing in our Chapter 6 of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Alice had just set the little pig down and it trotted off into the woods, and let's see who she meets next. She set the little creature down and felt quite relieved to see it trot away quietly into the wood. And she began thinking over the other children she knew who might well do as pigs or who wouldn't do well as pigs, when she was startled by seeing the Cheshire Cat sitting on the bough of a tree a few yards off. The cat only grinned when it saw Alice. It looked very good-natured, she thought. Still, it did have very long claws and a great many teeth, so she felt it ought to be treated with respect. Cheshire Cat, she began rather timidly, as she did not know at all whether it would like the name. However, it only grinned wider. "Oh, I think it's pleased." And she continued, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to walk from here?" "Well, that depends a good deal on where you want to go," said the cat. "I don't much care where—" "Then it doesn't matter which way you walk," said the cat. "So as long as I get somewhere," Alice added as an explanation. "Oh, well, you're sure to do that," said the cat, "if you only walk long enough." Alice felt that this could not be denied, so she tried another question. "What sort of people live about here?" "Well, in that direction," the cat said, waving its right paw round, "lives a hatter, and in that direction," waving the other paw, "lives a March hare. Visit either you like, they're both mad." "But I don't want to go among mad people," said Alice. "Oh, well, you can't help that," said the cat. "We're all mad here. I'm mad, you're mad." "How do you know I'm mad?" asked Alice. "Well, you must be, or you wouldn't have come here." Alice didn't think that proved it at all. However, she went on, "And how do you know that you're mad?" "To begin with," said the cat, "a dog's not mad. You grant that?" "I suppose so," said Alice. "Well then," the cat went on, "you see, a dog growls when it's angry, and it wags its tail when it's pleased. Now I growl when I am pleased, and I wag my tail when I am angry. Therefore, I'm mad." "I call it purring, not growling," said Alice. "Call it what you like," said the cat. "Do you play croquet with the Queen today?" "I should like it very much," said Alice, "but I haven't been invited yet." "You'll see me there," said the cat, and he vanished. Alice was not much surprised at this. She was getting so used to weird things happening. While she was still looking at the place where it had been, it suddenly appeared. "By the by, what became of the baby?" asked the cat. "I'd nearly forgotten to ask." "Oh, it turned into a pig," said Alice very quietly, just as if the cat had come back in a natural way. "I thought it would," said the cat, and he vanished again. Alice waited a little, half expecting it to see it again, but it did not reappear, and after a minute or two she walked on in the direction where the March hare was to live. "I've seen hatters before," she said to herself. "The March hare will prove most interesting, and perhaps as this is May, it won't be raving mad. At least not so mad as it is in March." And as she said this, she looked up, and there was the cat again, sitting on a branch of a tree. "Did you say pig or fig?" asked the cat. "I said pig," said Alice, "and I wish you wouldn't keep appearing and vanishing so suddenly. It makes one quite giddy." "All right," said the cat, and this time it vanished quite slowly, beginning with the end of his tail and ending with a grin, which remained some time after the rest of the cat had gone. "Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin," thought Alice, "but a grin without a cat, it's the most curious thing I ever saw in all my life." She had not gone much farther before she came in sight of the house of the March hare. She thought it must be the right house because the chimneys were shaped like ears and the roof was thatched with fur. It was so large a house that she did not like to go nearer till she had nibbled some more of the left-hand bit of mushroom and raised herself to about 2 feet high. Then she walked up toward it rather timidly, saying to herself, "Suppose it should be raving mad after all. I almost wish I'd gone to see the Hatter instead." Now we're on to Chapter 7, A Mad Tea Party. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it, talking over its head. Very uncomfortable for the dormouse, thought Alice, only since it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. "No room, no room," they cried out when they saw Alice coming. "There's plenty of room," said Alice, and she sat down in a large armchair at the end of the table. "Have something to drink," the March Hare said in an encouraging tone. Alice looked all around the table, but there was nothing in it but tea. "Well, I don't see anything else to drink." "Well, there isn't any," said the March Hare. "Well, then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it." "It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited," said the March Hare. "Well, I didn't know it was your table," said Alice. "It's laid for a great many more than 3. "I think your hair wants cutting," said the Hatter. He had been looking at Alice for some time with great curiosity, and this was his first speech. "You should learn not to make personal remarks," said Alice. "It's very rude." The Hatter opened his eyes very wide on hearing this, but all he said was, "Why, this is a raven like a writing desk." "Come, we shall have some fun now," thought Alice. "I'm glad they've begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that one." "Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it?" "Oh, exactly so," said Alice. "Then you should say what you mean," said the March Hare. "Oh, I do," replied Alice hastily. At least I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know." "Not the same thing a bit," said the Hatter. "Why, you might just as well say, 'I see what I eat' is the same thing as 'I eat what I see.'" "You might as well just as say," said the March Hare, "that 'I like what I get' is the same thing as 'I get what I like.'" "You might as well just as say," asked the Dormouse, who seemed to be talking in his sleep, "that 'I breathe when I sleep' is the same thing as 'I sleep when I breathe.'" "It is the same thing with you," said the Hatter, and here the conversation dropped, and the party sat silent for a minute, while Alice thought over all she could remember about ravens and writing desks, which wasn't very much. The Hatter was the first to break the silence. "What day of the month is it?" he said, turning to Alice. He had taken his watch out of his pocket, and he was looking at it uneasily, shaking it every now and then and holding it to his ear. Alice considered a little and said, "The 4th. "2 days wrong," said the Hatter. "I told you butter wouldn't suit the works," he said, looking angrily at the March Hare. "It was the best butter," said the March Hare. "Yes, but some crumbs must have got in it as well. You shouldn't have put it with the bread knife," said the Hatter. The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily. Then he dipped the watch into his cup of tea and looked at it again. But he could think of nothing better to say than his first remark. It was the best butter, you know. Alice had been looking over his shoulder with some curiosity. "What a funny watch," she remarked. "It tells the day of the month and doesn't tell what o'clock it is." "Well, why shouldn't it?" muttered the Hatter. "Does your watch tell you what year it is?" "Well, of course not," said Alice, "but that's because it stays the same year for such a long time altogether." "Which is just the case with mine," said the Hatter. Alice felt dreadfully puzzled. The Hatter's remark seemed to her to have no sort of meaning in it, and yet he was certainly speaking English. "I don't quite understand you," she said, as politely as she could. "The Dormouse is asleep again," said the Hatter, and he poured a little hot tea into the Dormouse's nose. The Dormouse shook its head impatiently and said without opening its eyes, Of course, of course. That's just what I was going to remark myself. Have you guessed the riddle yet? The Hatter said, turning to Alice again. No, said Alice, I give up. What's the answer? I haven't the slightest idea, said the Hatter. Nor I, said the March Hare. Alice sighed. Oh, I think you might do something better with the time than wasting it in asking riddles that have no answers. And we will stop there, and we will continue the next night. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody say good night to George. Good night, George.